Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, Larry the Batman fan. Hope everyone's doing well. So, we're going to continue this series here, um, on the games that I feel are either um, some of the best games for a particular console or some games that I find or feel is overrated or underrated, rather, not overrated. I got my cat here with me today. He's just hanging out right now. Just chilling there. This guy. Yeah. Yeah, he's just chilling there. Anyways, yeah. So we already talked about the NES. We talked about the Super Nintendo, the N64, and we talked about the GameCube. So let's go ahead and switch gears. We'll talk about Sega a bit because Sega, they were a pretty cool company back in the day. They started off with like making slot machines and things like that back in I think the 60s, and then it just evolved into making video games in the early 80s. And they were a competitor of Nintendo at the time. Of course, now they work with Nintendo, which is crazy. But yeah, the first console was the Sega Master System. I've never played that system personally, but Phantasy Star is a pretty cool game. I know I played that, but I played it through emulation, so I didn't really play the physical cartridge itself. So can't really say anything on that game, or I mean the system rather. I think they made a Ghostbusters game on there, a Double Dragon game, Fantasy Zone, a bunch of other games. I think there was Bonanza Brothers on there, and a Sonic the Hedgehog game. But yeah, I never really had much experience with the Master System, so I can't really say anything. Now, the Sega Genesis, however, which came out in 1989, um, was a really good system. I have played that. I played some great games on the system. I played a few crappy games on the system too. The best games on the Sega Genesis, obviously, was Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, and 3. And then you had like Fantasy Stars 2, 3, and 4, all excellent. You had the Sega 6 pack, which is basically the cheapest way to get some of those classics nowadays because the other ways of getting Streets of Rage 2 or Streets of Rage in the Golden Axe series, the cartridge form is very expensive unless you get the 6 pack cartridge, which I have. So I play those on my Sega Genesis. It was a good game. It had 6 games on it. Sonic the Hedgehog on there too and stuff. Super Hang On and Columns. I thought Tin Head, we'll get to that. Aladdin was one of the best games on the system for a movie license game, which was very surprising that Aladdin was that good of a game, for a movie tie-in game. And The Lion King was pretty dope as well. Um, Kid Chameleon I thought was a pretty good game. I liked that game. That was a lot of fun. Going around with that little um, crowbar thing or whatever weapon that thing was. Just whacking enemies and stuff. And then you get a power up. You become like a super badass in the game. It was really awesome. Plus, you get a helmet on your head and everything. The game got pretty difficult over time, but it was really good. It's a great game. Um, of course, there were some others. Comic Zone and Vector Man 1 and 2. You can't forget those titles. Those are awesome as well. And RoboCop versus the Terminator was a really great side-scrolling shooter game. Excellent. Can't complain. The The levels were excellent and everything. It was just a lot of fun to play, you know. And plus, it was gory, you know. One of the first games that was gory, you know. It was a great game. And then the underrated games for the Sega Genesis. I think Gadget Twins is underrated. Tin Head is definitely underrated and not so appreciated. Lethal Enforcers, I would go to say, is pretty underrated. Um, uh, what else? Jurassic Park, that's underrated. I mean, it's well known, I guess. Maybe not super underrated, but I mean, it's it's still like who buys Jurassic Park for your Sega Genesis? Like, come on. Target Earth, that's another underrated Sega Genesis game for sure. It's a side scroller. Um, there was a game called Steel Empire for the Sega Genesis, which was a shoot 'em up game. Yeah, that game is definitely underrated. It's fun too, but it's a hard son of a bitch to beat. And also Zero Tolerance, which was a first person shooter for the Sega Genesis, is highly underrated, you know. So those are just a handful of games on the Sega Genesis that I could consider to be underrated. For the Sega Saturn, obviously the best games on the Sega Saturn is definitely Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2, Panzer Dragoon Sagas, Daytona USA, the original Resident Evil, which is an excellent survival horror game. Um, Panzer Dragoon was excellent. You know, it's one of the first games that you'd play where the environments were mind blowing for the time. Of course, they re-released this game on PS4, but you know, so they look even better now. But back then, in 1995, the first Panzer Dragoon came out. People's minds were blown by how damn good the graphics looked at the time. Of course, now they look a little bit fuzzy, but back then people didn't know any difference rather. It was pretty awesome. Be a knight flying on a dragon, shooting dragons. It was like the first time you saw a 3D type of game. You know, you didn't really see anything 3D before that. Genesis was not 3D. Neither was the NES or Super Nintendo or the Atari or the Intellivision. None of that was like that. So Sega Saturn really proved like that could be the start of like 3D games, you know, and it just was a great game. Wipeout, of course, Guardian Heroes. You know, you had Street Fighter Alpha 2. I think the first Street Fighter Alpha, those were excellent, you know. Um, Daytona USA. It had to be the Championship Circuit Edition, though, because the first one they fucked it up because they missed two levels. Two levels were not in the game, and the draw distance in the game was just terrible, you know. So you gotta go with the Championship Circuit Edition version of the game. Yeah. So those are just some of the games that I could think of. Oh yeah, I can't forget about Shining Force 3 and also Virtua Cop 1 and 2, which were also excellent. Gotta love those as well. Those were excellent. The worst or the most underrated games on Sega Saturn. Let's see. Scud. I think Scud's underrated. A Stall. Pandemonium. Um, Honestly, I feel like Fighting Vipers is underrated, although something tells me it's not. But that was a good fighting game. I like that game. That was a blast to play. So those are just some that I can think of that I consider underrated. Now for the Dreamcast, because we're only focusing on the console, systems. Not the Sega Game Gear because that was a handheld, but Dreamcast, obviously the must-own games for the system is Shenmue, Crazy Taxi 1 and 2, Sonic's Adventure 1 and 2, um, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 are pretty fun. And then also you can't forget Skies of Arcadia and the Phantasy Star Online games, which were excellent. All great games that you could have for your Dreamcast. Definitely worth a buy, if you're gonna play Dreamcast, but be aware that the prices of the Dreamcast and the Sega Saturn have skyrocketed over the years. This is 2024 now, and just the prices on those games just crazy. Not every title, but some of them are pretty damn expensive, I will say. Like Illbleed, I know is a game on Dreamcast. It's like $350. It's not a cheap one. The underrated games for the Dreamcast that are good is like Blue Stinger, Confidential Mission, Omicron or Amicron, however you pronounce it. That's an underrated game. Um, yeah. Mach and X, that game too. That game I feel is underrated as well. And sort of the Berserk. So those are some of the games that I would consider to be underrated. You know, definitely Sega was a good console. They didn't make a lot of their software was well produced and mass produced, and I like the design of the Genesis controller. I mean, it really fits comfortable in my hands. I'm a rather tall man. I'm a 6'7" man, so like it's really nice having a controller that really fits in the palm of your hands. And that it really feels good and whatnot. The Sega Saturn controller was comfortable too, but the Dreamcast controller, I didn't think that was a very comfortable controller, honestly. I think they could have designed that better. It feels weird when you hold it in your hands and you're skating around in a game of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, or doing tricks on Jet Grind Radio or whatever, or kicking someone's butt and giving that kick in the face while playing Shenmue. I don't know, just something about the controller is just weird to me. But I like the design of each system. Each system design was pretty neat and everything. Plus, the Dreamcast was the start of the internet. Games having the capability to be played online and everything. Although I feel like that's kind of gone downhill since the Dreamcast and PS2 days. It's gotten gradually worse to where games you have to play online. You can't even play the games not online, some of them, which is stupid. But anyways, yeah, that's just some of my opinions and my thoughts on the Sega consoles. Stay tuned because there is going to be probably one more video. We're going to talk about the Xbox consoles. Maybe the PlayStation consoles as well. Maybe I'll just combine them into one. And then I'm going to see what other videos we can come up with for gaming videos here to talk about. Yeah, don't pay any attention to Black Sheep of the World because he's a cuckoo head. He's a clown. He wants to say all this shit about me. Let him say all this shit about me because the truth is, it's not true. And I'm entitled to play gaming, make gaming videos if I want. It's my channel. I can do whatever the hell I want. Don't tell me what to do, Black Balls of the World, because you're not in charge of me and my channel. Just like you be talking negative about everybody that you hate. Well, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to just provide my thoughts on gaming. So if you don't like it, just don't watch my videos. Because really, I don't give a fuck if you watch or not. I mean, I like my subscribers, and I really appreciate everyone that's watching. But the cyberbullies, they can fuck off for all I care, because I don't care if they're watching my videos or not. You know, so I just had to add that in here and talk about it, because I really don't care. I'm just here to provide entertainment. There's so many people that do gaming videos out there, and it's a platform, and I'm entitled to do that if I want to. Make gaming videos and whatnot. So, anyways, besides all these haters, screw the haters. Thank y'all, everybody else who watches my videos. I appreciate y'all. And stay tuned, because we are going to be doing a third part to this, and some other gaming videos are planned. So stay tuned for that. God bless you and have a wonderful night. Take care. And keep on gaming.